Hello, good day and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Lit Peng Lau from PwC Hong Kong. Today's session we'll be talking a little bit around green business model and sustainable investment. But first of all, it's really a privilege to be here on behalf of PwC Hong Kong. PwC has been the exclusive knowledge partner of the Asian Financial Forum. This is the 9th consecutive year that we're doing this. And today, we're here today with two really distinguished guests. Very excited to have them both here. I'll talk a little bit about our discussion topics and then introduce our guests and we can go into the panel straight away. So we are in an era where businesses are moving towards greening their business model and also around sustainable investment and to make sure that every penny and every dollar that we invest is sustainable and helps with the growth of our business. But what does it really mean? What are the factors that investors or portfolio managers need to consider when you're selecting a green project? What's green? How are financial institutions implementing a decarbonized investment strategy? How do we shift towards a portfolio and transition to a portfolio of a low carbon economy? So these are some of the discussion points that our guests will share a little bit with us today based on their experience. Now, first of all, I have Mr. Anthony Cheung. He's the Managing Director and Head of ESG at Polymer Capital Management. And I have Miranda Wong as well. She's the Assistant General Manager of Sustainability at the New World Development Company. So welcome both. Very nice to have you both here. I'm going to get you both to talk a little bit about your perspective and your organization in the context of the topic that we have today. But first of all, maybe for Anthony to start with, maybe tell us a little bit about what do you consider as some of the key factors that we need to think about when we're selecting green projects, or what does it count as a green investment?
Sure.
Anthony.
Thanks a lot, Lit Peng, and thanks for having me today from AFF for having me to share my 2 cents. So traditionally, institutional investors would always focus on something called screening, or in terms of driving investing or divesting the right investments or projects. So for example, they're making good use of screening to screen out the so-called bad guys, i.e. what market has been perceiving as less socially responsible, or they would actually use ESG rating to decide what companies that they would need to buy up or invest. I think the recent spotlight has actually shifted towards stewardship, i.e. active ownership. When we talk about that, it's involving engagement and also proxy voting, and to make use of that to drive and influence corporate behavior and to align that with some of the environmental or social objectives of the investors. So it could be ranged from phasing out coal or social inclusion or digitalizations and helping out the community. So I think there are also, Lit Peng, that's one of the very interesting shift that I'm seeing these days is investors have been moving from traditionally looking at ESG score to focus on specific topics, including, decarbonization, the low carbon transitions that you mentioned, as well as, some other important sustainability agenda, climate and nature included.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. I think I like to sort of use the phrase from doing no harm to doing good. I think it's kind of what you're saying here. And I think maybe using that angle to position that to Miranda, to talk a little bit about you and New World Development in terms of how do you think about this do no harm and doing good element?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Lit Peng, and glad to be here with the both of you. So maybe just as a quick response to what you just said, Anthony, it's really good to know that investors are going beyond the ESG ratings and doing a lot of stewardship. That's also what we've experienced at New World Development as well. So to speak a little bit about our ESG considerations at New World Development. First, I guess when you had mentioned coal, that's also something that we've done at New World. So we developed a climate change policy a couple of years ago. So one one of our commitments is about, refraining from coal assets and also divesting any remaining assets that we have. So that was from, a couple of years ago. But recently, actually last month, so this is actually a really timely webinar, we approved and launched our responsible investment policy. So this is much more comprehensive than what we previously had, and it also includes ESG filters to assess related risks and opportunities, just to ensure that our investments align with our strategy, targets, and commitments. So, in case, our audience isn't aware of our commitments, from 2018, we developed our New World Sustainability Vision 2030, which incorporates 4 pillars. So, not just green and environmental, but also wellness, smart, and caring. And since then, we've also continued to evolve, having set 1.5C aligned near-term science-based targets, and we also have commitment to set long-term net zero targets. So, just a little bit more about our investment filters, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but in addition to, our externally communicated strategies and commitments and targets, we also conduct a comprehensive due diligence process to support our investment decision-making. So, for example, for the environment side, it's not, just about our decarbonization. It's also, doing comprehensive assessments. For example, is it contaminated land, or have we screened for protected species and ecosystems? Have we conducted those, physical climate risk assessments? For building certifications, we have, certain commitments that we've put in place. So, are we putting in additional measures in order to obtain those certificates? From a social impact perspective, what are we doing for the community, and are there any vulnerable communities for the investments, where the investments are located? Are there, anything that we should do from a social impact perspective, and also ethical considerations? So, the list could go on and on, but yeah, these are some of the considerations that we're taking into account.
Oh, thank you very much, Miranda. Sounds like lots of work that you and your team have been actively working on. And I kind of want to pick up one of the key things that you mentioned, which is around the net zero agenda, because that is obviously for many of us and many of the organizations a very important agenda globally that we need to work towards, and also the concept around the implications if we don't, the climate risk that will come across if we don't meet towards a 1.5 degree align or a net zero world. And I think some of the frameworks that have come up in recent years have been really helpful, isn't it? So the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, that has put a little bit of a framework around how do you look at governance, how do you look at risk management, how do you, have a strategy to respond to it, and what types of metrics and targets you need to be aligning to. I think that it sounds like that has very much framed some of the thinking that New World Development have done. But under that framework, right, we have the 4 pillars, and I kind of want to bring that to Anthony, because I know you're very passionate around governance and climate governance in particular. So tell us a little bit more about your interest in this area, and a little bit about your perspective of how we should apply governance frameworks when we're considering our decarbonization journey.
Sure, thank you, Liping. So I would say that at the very minimum, it is very important to make sure that the board accountability, which for now, I don't think it's an issue, because HKEX has already stated very clear in its expectations. And I know that all the listed company in Hong Kong these days would know that board have the overall accountability, and they have the ownership of all the key sustainability issues. Now, by doing that, it doesn't mean that all board members, ED or INET, they should become a climate scientist. I mean, it would be nice to have 1 or 2 in the board, but it would not be reasonable to expect that you have to be a climate or ESG expert to become a board member. Instead, I think what is more important is to make sure that individual board members or board as a whole would have a very good understanding towards material ESG issues. Okay, and that varies across different industry, across sectors. The same case applied to New World. Also, it would also be very important to have a dedicated ESG function or task force. So you have got, like in-house staff or team that's dedicated taking care of that. They probably sometimes could have their internal plans. Sometimes they would seek, external expertise, or talk to Li Peng for some advice. But also, I think it's also widely expected, at a very minimum, that there would be some setup of ESG policy and procedures as guidelines for the company. So these are what I would say are what we should be expecting a lot of listed company to do these days. And most of them are gaining the momentum in doing that. Now, for best practices, since Li Peng, you mentioned about climate governance, so I want to share with you one of the key global initiative initiated by the World Economic Forum, WEF, at Davos back in 2019. They issue a white paper for effective climate governance principles. So there are 8 core principles of that. We don't need to go through it one by one, but some of the key elements, I'm sure Miranda and Li Peng, you two would both agree that they are all the usual suspects. So it talks about, the governance structure. You would need to have top-down oversight and bottom-up support, competence, meaning getting the right expertise, and needed incentivization. So incentives is a very key thing. I know that some companies in the region started to incorporating ESG-related KPIs, into remunerations or compensations to board or senior management. That would be a very good start. And finally, communications, because I think one thing that New World would do very well is not just about the sustainability initiatives or projects that you have planned, but also convey the right message to the stakeholders, to the community, and also something that Li Peng, you would be able to share some advice or wisdom later on in the sessions.
Yep. Thanks, Anthony. And definitely on the climate governance initiative, if anyone is interested in it, do look it up. It is, I think, although it was published a number of years ago, I think many of the messaging is still relevant. And I think like what you said, Anthony, it is the usual key pillars. And that's important because I think climate is part of business, right? Climate is part of business today. So we need to put governance framework around it, just like we put around any major transformation and any major issues that we are facing as a business. And
I totally agree with you, Li Peng. And one thing, if I may chip in, the good thing about CGI, the Climate Governance Initiative, is they've actually launched a local chapter in Hong Kong, and it is actually one of the first free chapter for the whole Asia Pacific region. And New World is actually one of the supporting sponsor, and also have got representatives in the steering committee. So there are a lot of corporates and professional firms that is helping out on this, and it would serve as a very good platform to have capacity building for board of directors on what needs to be known on board agenda.
Yeah. Excellent. And I think what you've just said is an important point, which is around awareness and upskilling, so that we all have we don't have to be an expert or a scientist, but we do need to have some prerequisites to be able to handle a difficult agenda. And I think this is also about handling some of these risks within your organizations, but also, to the point of today's sustainable investment, your investments and your portfolio. And to this, maybe I will turn to you, Miranda, to ask you a little bit about, you invest in many, first of all, real assets in general, but also in some cases, other forms of investments. So how do you, as an investor in this case, look at the progress of your investees in that journey?
Sure, yeah. So I guess, first, because Anthony, you has spoken about policies just now. So we do have a policy, our sustainable building policy that's in place. So with our policy, we set out our commitment to embed sustainability considerations into the full building life cycle. So, this really guides our efforts from, the very beginning, identification or acquisition of a project site, to project design, to property management, to stakeholder engagement, et cetera. So, by having these guidelines, it really, helps everyone in our ecosystem, push towards the same agenda. And we also, embedded in there are guidelines, for example, for our green building certifications. So, not only during the design phase, but we also look at the operations phase as well. So, this is really just one part of what we're looking at, building certifications, but it is a very important part because it ensures that we have a very solid baseline in energy efficiency, and then we can then make further improvements from there. So in addition to that, we also are very focused on collection of ESG data and also, having that two-way communication with our stakeholders. So, after getting the data, it's not just a matter of, reporting it, but it's actually looking at the data, looking at the trends, analyzing it, and then working with our internal teams to figure out, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean for, this building to be, consuming more energy now? Why is it consuming more energy? Really understanding what our needs are, what the trends are, and then working together to optimize our performance for our assets. And further to that, we also have consultants in place sometimes to help us audit our assets. So from there, we can better understand our performance and then also, what we need to do to optimize the assets. So if we have certain hardware that needs to be changed, what needs to be changed, what are our payback periods? So we have to, have a full understanding of that. So as you can tell, when we're working on, optimizing our assets, it's not just our team, it's also our operations teams, our project management teams, our property management teams, our finance team. So we all really have to work together in order to make these things happen. And then on top of that, what I was mentioning for our buildings, a lot of times, we're talking about like scope 1 and 2, right? But in our buildings, we have tenants. So, it's not just about, what we do, as an owner, it's also about, what our tenants do in their premises. So, we've also, initiated different programs, for example, like our CSB lease, working with our tenants to first, educate them on different sustainability topics, but also work with them to, for example, decrease their energy consumption, work on waste management. So, encourage different efforts in that area.
Okay, fantastic, Miranda. I think you've touched on something quite close to my heart, which is, Anthony, you talked about governance at the board level, at the senior management level, but actually within the sustainability topic itself, we rely a lot on data. We rely a lot on information, and you've actually touched on the governance of that data. So what needs to be put in place to collect that information, and to collect that information from your tenants, you have to put in place engagement strategy to work with them, collect that data, and then, as you say, it's not just collecting that data and then reporting it, but actually analyzing it so that you can get the information that you need to be able to make decisions, right? To be able to look at where you are moving ahead, where you are lagging, and how are you progressing through against the targets that you have set. Right. So I think the data governance is just one example as to how some of these governance piece plays out in the kind of how we look at ESG as a whole. And I guess maybe just to talk a little bit here as well, some of the recent regulatory developments, for example, the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, they have put forward a framework, common standards on how do we report and disclose our sustainability data. And I think that will inevitably drive that sustainability data governance at a minimum, and then hopefully that will also drive some of the governance at the senior management level. So I think it's what I wanted to do a little bit is come back to you, Miranda, because I asked you to talk a little bit about as an investor or in your investee or your portfolio, but maybe now as an investee, right? Or kind of the recipient of finance, and how are you sort of making yourself attractive to investors? How are you positioning yourself so that you can get the green capital or the green finance that you need for your projects?
Yeah, so I think, first, as Anthony mentioned, the stewardship element is so important. So, while we do spend a lot of efforts on ESG ratings or responding to many of them per year, spending a lot of effort on that. I think at the end of the day, it's not like, investors are purely looking at that performance, right? They also want, a lot more narratives behind it, and, really just like these engagement opportunities for us to explain, why we went a certain direction for something, why maybe the data is a certain way, why we disclose a certain way. So I think having those opportunities is extremely helpful for us to first learn, international or regional best practices from our investors, but also, to, have the opportunity to explain why we're doing things a certain way. So, that's on maybe like an institutional investor, type of side. But from, a green capital, attracting, capital from banks or, whether it's like through loans or bonds, I think, what we've done really well is put together our different sustainable finance frameworks. So because, several years ago we had that, we've already put together a sustainability strategy, and then also, the further decarbonization roadmaps that we've had in place, we've really set ourselves up to, put together these sustainable finance frameworks. So, the sustainable finance framework, it actually, lists out, so it's first of all referencing our, different international guidelines and frameworks. So we have in there, different projects, in terms of eligibility. It also lists out, how we should be reporting and monitoring. And I think that's really helped us, generate a lot of interest, and it's given us a lot of opportunities to work with banks and investors. So so far, we've had quite a few products in place. So we have different green loans and bonds. We have social loans and bonds, and also sustainability linked products as well. So far, actually our annual report is coming out next week, in case anyone is interested in taking a look at that. We do report on, all of our use of proceeds for the green and social loans and bonds. And what's really, been an interesting experience and a great experience is working with our banking and investor partners to create different innovative products. So, for example, last year, we issued a dual green perp and social bond. And also at the end of last year, we also had a social loan that's directly contributing to our Cut Exports Park project. So I think it's been, such an incredible experience working with investors and banks, and we're innovating and evolving with the industry every day, and also looking forward to learning from you all and investors and banks for how we can do better in this area.
Fantastic. I think New World Development has been, pushing the boundary a little bit in terms of what you can do and what you can achieve, and that example of the social and green bond, I think that is a kind of one good example of it. Now I wanted to just say to the audience, we're going to chat for a bit more, but we also welcome questions from you. I think you can put forward your questions, and we'll get round to it towards after we've chat a bit more. And with that, I want to sort of, New World Development is ambitious and have taken at the forefront of this agenda, but not all companies perhaps have the resources or have the ambition to do that. And I want to put the question to Anthony, because you interact with a lot of different types of organizations. What are some of the common challenges or obstacles for, why can't they be like Miranda and her team?
No, well, first I want to clarify, sustainability is always evolving, and,
yes,
we're all trying to, improve and, go with the, best industry standards and go with the best practices, always evolving. So I think, we've done, we've put significant effort into this area, but we're by no means like, the best or anything like that. I think we're, on the road to, delivering, a sustainable future. But, I don't want, like, I don't want to give a false impression that.
I echo with Miranda. I mean, big corporates and small corporates all have pain points. Like they are all very committed, or they're in different stages of sustainability journey. But I'm sure that like a lot of the some of the lessons or pain points that you have experienced are like many corporates are also facing these days. So I think it's we are all
we're on the journey together.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I were asked about, obstacles, I think, like the three most common complaints, if any, when I meet with companies, right? I mean, they always, I mean, the very first one, I'm sure you'll probably, Miranda, will also agree that, it's cost consideration. So we all know about, the problem for stranded assets, and it's good that it's time for, upgrading, asset enhancement, and also, we're doing a lot of measures towards mitigating some of these climate risks. Now, when cost kicks in, right, literally all the corporates would tell me, like, Anthony, like, it's great, you are doing all these engagement works, and you guys are investors, you guys are asking me to do this and that, but that costs money. Okay, so I if I were to be perfectly honest, this is like the single major pain points or complaints that I'm hearing. I think we all share that, like these 1 or 2 years, we're not in a super big bull market, or we're in a super big upcycle. So, that kicks in. I think even, to take that to the next level, what is even harder, especially, in the eyes of CFOs is, okay, I'm going to put in this money or CapEx for those necessary, investment for transition. The thing is, it's very hard for them to quantify the financial implications of all these investments and ESGs, on the company. Okay, so this is like a new topic that, like back in the days that we were in business school, we were taught, like every single things that we need to know on the financial statements, and all the sustainability ESG factors on the right hand side usually dealt with by the like geologists or scientists, right? I think the connecting the dots and how those sustainability or climate items would have an impact to different lines of the financial statements is something that hopefully being learned at universities or business school these days. But indeed, this is something that a lot of corporates are still figuring that out, which lead to the second pain points, which is about the limitations of resources, know-how and experience. And I think that ties to the increasing demand of ESG talents. I know that both New World and PwC have actually been expanding or growing the ESG functions, significantly over the past few years. I mean, the business leaders are very visionary. So I hope to hear some good news from you guys that like we are seeing a lot of rewards coming in place. I think the third one is about ESG data measurements, and this now, Niping, you're the expert on it. I mean, there are several key difficulties where corporates are facing, these days. I mean, corporate disclosures, in the past few years has always been like a pain point or struggles for corporates. With the introduction of ISSB, I'm seeing, some lights at the end of the tunnel. Okay, but on a ESG rating and data will be slightly more tricky. I don't know whether Miranda will have the same concerns as well. But somehow a lot of corporate or in-house sustainability team are working very hard on like we have to do this and do that. But somehow some of these ESG data and rating are just black box to me, and and I've no clue why. I mean, like it should be exemplified in these areas, but somehow, some of the scores from several data providers just didn't connect the dots. So I think that's the black box has always been a pain. Uncertain data sources is something of problem, and also data lag. So I think the Hong Kong Exchange has been doing a great job in, getting consistency in terms of corporates' ESG disclosures. They are moving forward, the reporting timeline. But that's I think that is I'm still hearing a lot of confusions or sometimes difficulties for corporates about the problem for the ESG data.
I think that's really the 2 points that you mentioned. I think costs, we all know it's a challenge, right? But the 2 points that you mentioned, I think that is a practical one. So one around the data and one around the talent. I think on data, I mean, not only in terms of potentially the ambiguity in terms of what gets consumed and how do people interpret it, but also the emerging regulatory requirements, right? So for anyone that has an operation in the EU, you might have heard the thing around the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and but when we were looking and analyzing the requirements of it, we understand that it could demand up to 1,000 data points. So how do you manage? Back to the point around governance, right? How do you manage, the collection, the validation, the assurance of these data points? And I think that then brings in the demand on talent, on resources, right? So how do you have enough people who know how to do with these data and how to interpret this data? For us, I thank you so much for saying that, we've been visionary in this area. I think it's one of those things where how much is enough? We are very proud in terms of what PwC does on climate upskilling. We have a fantastic program for all of our staff around, upskilling their climate knowledge. A campaign that we ran in China and Hong Kong, especially, called ESG Go, and it's kind of a gamification of some of the learning, so that our staff get engaged. But that's just one part of the coin. Right, then comes new topics, as you say. I love your humility, by the way, in terms of where we are on the sustainability journey. But you tackle climate, and then there's the agenda around nature. So how do we look at nature? So one interesting thing, just to share a little bit as well. For us, we think that nature is an important and emerging topic. It is very interconnected with climate. You need to think about it. So we've kind of looked back within ourselves on the upskilling part. We launched what we call Center for Nature Positive Business. So we counted our expertise, people who know a fair bit around nature topic. There are about 500 of us. Thought pretty good, right? In globally, 500 people with experience around nature, but our staff are about 300,000 people. So we need to and make use of these 500 people to upskill the rest of our PwC to be able to talk about some of these topics. And I think if we have this issue, I'm sure many of the organizations will have a similar challenge as well. And then going back to the, how do you look at governance and data around nature, which is even another topic. So that's a little bit around, at least because you've touched on, things that are close to my heart. So I feel like I have to talk a little bit about what we're doing in that space.
For sharing.
Yeah. But I want to move a little bit around, and again, I was really pleased that you've brought out that how humble you are around the sustainability journey, because I think we all need to be a bit more. We need a lot more humility in this. We know that we're not quite there yet. But there is this risk around greenwashing that many organizations are, they're concerned that they would be accused of greenwashing if they're overstating their commitments, or if they're saying something that can be misinterpreted by the public, the media, the social media, etc. So maybe to Anthony first, share us a little bit about your views on greenwashing as a topic, and think about, especially around the governance, that point that you've talked about earlier. How do we address this risk?
Thanks, Liping. And the questions could have been more timely. So we are very honored to actually partner with the Hong Kong U Business School to co-launch a ESG investing course for the undergraduates this year, just starting in this term. And on the very last week, I've just got to share, the different forms of greenwashing and the risk and the impact on the corporate. So there are actually different forms of greenwashing, which I'm not gonna,
Actually, I was going to say you should tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, but I think, I think there are a few things that I would like to highlight. First of all, a very useful tips is we actually find out that, the way that we do is when we meet with companies, right? We were always asked about, we would talk to the IR team and the CFOs, and we want to try to find out, what are the focus about, the ESG works and efforts of the company. And basically, different firms would tell us about, so where they're focused on, and we kind of would be able to help us to understand that which stage, they are, on the sustainability journey. We found out that, a lot of companies that when they first started that ESG journey, they always have a focus on the PR, on the IR side of the sustainability work. So, somehow a lot of greenwashing issues to a certain extent has to do with the communication, so corporate communications or PR team. I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong, it's not the comms team or the PR team that didn't do their job properly. In fact, they are actually very good at their job because they are supposed to convey the message of the company ESG efforts, to the stakeholders, to the market. The problem is sometimes, they may or may not have the right level of ESG knowledge and expertise, so that when they convey the message, when some of the more ESG specialists looking at it, they would that would have the risk of somewhat of exaggerations of some of the green messages. So that's the most common form of greenwashing. In fact, I would say that a lot of cases we are seeing in global markets, whether in the EU or more recently in Australia, a lot of that has to do with the comms and the marketing side. So I think one of the very, quick fix to this is to make sure that, well, we could do it either two ways. Now, we have the, communication team to work very closely, for example, with the dedicated ESG functions, like Miranda in your team, so that they would make sure that the message is conveyed in a more robust manner. Or alternatively, capacity building, never ends. And from an in-house standpoint, it's also very important to make sure that, a ESG team would be as the knowledge center, right? And to help a lot of other teams, compliance, legal, internal control, comms team inclusive, about building about the right know-how of ESG. I felt that is very important. The final two tips would be looking for consistency. Okay, in terms of disclosures, a lot of greenwashing issues that we are seeing emerging these days have to do with either commitments, targets, etc. So the consistency is very important. And finally, looking for alignment with government policy or national policy and actions, progress. Those are very good way of prevention or mitigating or minimizing greenwashing risk.
Oh, fantastic! I think I've been asked the same question that I posed to you, right? How do you, what do you think about greenwashing? And I think my answer at that time was to say that, I don't think a company start out by saying, I want to greenwash, right? In fact, they're trying actively not to greenwash and to make sure that what they're putting out there is carefully calibrated to meet their objectives. And one of the things that we've heard in the last year or two, because of all the fear of risk of being accused of greenwashing, there's a new term, you might have heard of it, green hushing. So, but the fear of saying too much has led to saying too little. So, and Miranda, you mentioned earlier that you're about to release your annual report, and I'm sure, as part of that process of calibrating and making sure what you say is truly accurate and reflect your current status. Well, how have you been going through that process? Tell us a little bit more about how you're managing that greenwashing versus green hushing risk.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe to Anthony's point earlier, which I really liked, about how to, you mentioned two ways, of, navigating this. So, the learning, capacity building, and then also, working with our corporate communications teams. So, really it's both. So that's what we really try and do at New World, so, doing that capacity building and ensuring that all of our stakeholders, whichever function or whatever it is, we have the proper capacity building programs for them. So that includes our corporate affairs, corporate communications, making sure that we're not overstating these claims, but also working with them along the way to make sure that they have the latest and that they understand everything, and having that center of excellence, you said, in our sustainability team. So I guess. To your question, Liping, so, every year we conduct a stakeholder engagement and materiality assessment. So, I think it's really important to, understand from all of our stakeholders what the material topics are, and then also, getting from them their views, these external views, and these best practices. And then from there, realizing what our material topics are, then doing our reporting and our case studies. Because I guess also, when, related to greenwashing, it's like we can say that we're doing really well in, one aspect. But if it's, such an insignificant aspect, an immaterial topic for us, then, is it really a good case study to be presenting? So, really doing an evaluation of all of that. For our disclosures, like making sure that everything is, transparent, accurate. And, it's not just, from us and having the proper governance, but it's also getting external verification as well. So, getting third parties to, sanity check our strategy, our targets, and our disclosures. So I think that's really how we're combating greenwashing. In terms of, green hushing, I'm not exactly sure I'll answer that, but I guess in terms of, what we are disclosing, we want to make sure that, everything has like rock solid evidence, that everything is backed up with something, and, just getting the internal governance and that external verification processes in place before, we announce or disclose anything.
Yeah. And if I may, echo what Miranda just shared, I think to ensure a very good investor educational engagement on the ESG side are very important. So I think increasingly these days, I'm actually very happy to see that in the Hong Kong China markets, there are actually more and more big caps or so-called the blue chips company have got ESG dedicated roadshow or investor presentations. I mean, to be honest, I think if we look at the level of disclosures that actually yes, we're expecting, I'll be very surprised that there are. I would expect that most of the blue chips these days would be able to have dedicated ESG presentations with the investors, because that is exactly increasingly what institutional investors are asking for. So just earlier in the month, I was in Tokyo for PR in person, like one of the biggest sustainable investment conferences
globally,
and I've actually got a chance to meet with one of the top investment banks in the world. They are actually offering new initiative on the engagement side for Japanese companies. So they are actually helping a lot of Japanese corporates and institutional investors to talk together, and their focus is on specific ESG engagement. And I felt that this is something that it's good to see that I'm seeing quite a few companies on the ground are doing that. I know Unilever is doing that too, but I would encourage more and more companies to consider doing that. I mean, first of all, that's demonstrate, board understanding and commitments to sustainability. Secondly, in terms of know-how and understanding, and also about, conveying the right message with the investors. That's, I think it was actually create a positive loop and cycles.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think, on my side at least, it's very exciting to, that you mentioned this, but also to learn that there is a demand for it. So we have been a part of these roadshows before. And, I guess, the last couple of years, it has been, it's a bit more difficult, I would say. But, I'm just so glad that, there is a demand there, that investors are interested in ESG specific, sessions, and not just, about the financial results. This is all very exciting.
Yeah. No, I think definitely, collaboration and cross information sharing between investors and investees across the corporates. I think within the industry as well. I think that those are some of the things that can help us move the needle a little bit more. Now, I wanted to end with one question before I open it up to the audience. But I saw some questions came in, and one of the questions that came in is quite similar to what I was about to ask. So I might kind of borrow that question. So we have talked about a few things so far. We've talked about the role of governance in transforming business model. We have talked about talent as part of moving us forward, and we've talked about data and collaboration as well. Now, perhaps what I wanted to bring is what else, right? What are some of the things that we need to pay attention to going forward, especially in 1 or 2 years? And specifically, to borrow the question from the audience, we have had the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, around for a while. Are there any of those goals that you think actually we need to do more about, and that's where the potential is. So what's what to look at? What should we look out for?
Sure. If I may
Please do.
start that, take that, Liping. I think I'm really glad that you talk about SDG. I mean, historically, I know corporates love SDG, right? I mean, it's very colorful. All the 17 goals is, and different corporates, depending on the sectors, there are things that they could, really leverage and maximize their impact. So it's also very good on the training, and all the HR loves it, right? Now, their pain point, used to be on the finance community and the engagement side is that, okay, we know SDG is important. Tell me how to quantify it, right? I mean, again, as we also look at the financial performance of the company, and some of the most sophisticated ESG investors would have already made the connections between ESG factors and alpha generations, right, on performance, corporate financials performances. But SDG is much more harder. Now, the good news is there are, SDG was launched officially by UN in 2015. I mean, with years of efforts, there are actually more internationally recognized and credible frameworks in terms of SDG benchmarking and measurement. And investors these days love it. So when I was in Tokyo, I was actually asked about, some of the very interesting initiative. For example, the World Benchmarking Alliance, WBA benchmarks, is an international, global nonprofit that publish authoritative rankings and measurements on SDGs. And investors loves it. Okay, so I think that would be a very good starting point, because very two key concepts within. First of all, is the sector materiality. I mean, there are, Liping, you asked about which particular SDG that we could focus on, and my very honest answer is that's very sector specific. So a very good way is to, take a look at the WBA website, and there would be specific sector benchmarks. So depending on the companies that you invest in, or the business that you are operating, there are specific SDG benchmarks that would be a very good guiding, point. And I think it is very widely used in Europe and also US. I'm glad to see that investors in this part of the world, in Asia, are started having a lot of interest and making good use of that. And it's open source, transparent and free of charge. So it's something that a lot of investors are paying attention to these days.
Yeah, you've reminded me of when the SDGs were launched. One of the things that we did at PwC to facilitate that. Okay, what's relevant to me is this little tool. I think it's probably still online, where if you filter by country, you filter by sector, you get the ones that are typically relevant to you, and that's the kind of and since then there's been even more tools and resources, as you say, to help one align with the SDGs. But Miranda, what about you? What do you think? What do you think will be the one to watch out for, or the ones to watch out for?
So this isn't exactly from an investments perspective or anything like that, but a recent survey that I saw, I think I just read it yesterday. It was a survey conducted in Hong Kong, and the one that scored the lowest, as in, people deprioritize this one, was responsible consumption. So I don't know if that's, a reflection of, our day-to-day in Hong Kong or anything like that, but I just thought, that one was surprising to me, that one was, the lowest ranked out of all 17. But from, an investments perspective, for the next, 1 or 2 years, I think social would be a really interesting area. I think, at least for us, we have, we've also raised some social instruments. I think this is definitely an area of interest for investors, delivering on those social outcomes, whether it's, based on, having the right kind of infrastructure in place so that people have access to basic needs, or whether it's sports or health related. I think, especially having gone through the pandemic, I think this is definitely an area that's, more of interest to everyone than it was, from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I think so it is very interesting or puzzling that responsible consumption wasn't ranked as highly, because if you think about it, all the SDGs are interlinked in many ways, right? So it is about how do you draw the connectivity between some of the agenda that we're focusing today around potentially net zero, and how does that link with the concept around responsible consumption and production, the concepts around circular economy, by tackling, waste along the value chain, and by looking at ways that we can reuse, remanufacture, recycle, those sort of things. Those are critical, right, to the net zero agenda. So I'm puzzled a little bit as to why that hasn't been.
And maybe to our points before, we need more capacity building to help everyone connect the dots.
Exactly. So I think there's also maybe the mentality that you have to choose one, you pick one,
Sure.
and that's a bit of that. So we are getting some questions in, and I do want to encourage the audience. Please keep your questions coming in. We're kind of gently moving into some of the Q&A a little bit. We've had a question in, which we sort of, Anthony, you've already talked about it, which is the point around cost. But I guess it's also not just about costs, but about the return on the investment. So even if it's an investment, you need to have sensible returns, and you're comparing against others. I think the question is, often it's not a very large. There might be an absence of, first of all, potentially, is this value creation, right? So there might not be an increase in profits, but even if there is a decrease in profit, the tolerance for that is very low. So how can we improve the investor's perspective, because it's profit to the earth, profit to the people versus profit to the investor.
Sure. No, I totally agree the struggle, and that's actually one of the major, I would argue, misconceptions towards ESG investing. I actually got a chance to share with us in the very first lecture of my classes with the Hong Kong student. But I mean, for those who have studied a more robust or structured ESG program, for example, the Certified ESG Analyst Program, CESCR. I know a lot of your colleagues, they may have taken it. It's actually touch on this topic right from the beginning. So whether we look at it from an academic point of view or empirical point of view, one of the things that have not been noted well in the past is that for some of the if for the right applications of ESG investment strategies or integration, it could actually it could do two things. First of all, it could bring alpha generations, and the reason why for that, as supported by some of the academic research, is because it would drive corporate financials performance improvement. And the interesting is some of these research are showing that to the parts of the emerging markets, including Asia, emerging Asia, or Latin America, a lot of Belt and Road economies, that is very true. Even and it works even better than a lot of so-called developed economies in Europe, in US. And I think part of the reason is, in taking Europe, for example, a lot of people are saying that ESG investing is somewhat mainstream, right? But relatively in this part of the world, it's still relatively new. And as a result, there's a lot of inflows coming in. A lot of good ESG companies are still relatively under-researched and under-invested. So the capital flows are actually driving both the improvement of the so-called re-rating of some of the company, or driving direct, improvement on financial performances. So I think that part, could be even better understood by the market. And for the same questions, if you ask the retail investors, would also be very different from the big asset owners. So some of the biggest, asset owners like sovereign wealth funds or central banks that we have talked to, over the past few weeks, again, in those international settings, would all agree that, they are actually seeing a lot of value creations of some of these businesses and companies in addressing some of the sustainability issues. So in the past, a lot of focus was still on the cost item and the cost implications, but there's actually more and more who would be able to innovate their products and services in resolving some of those sustainability issues, or tackling one of those 17 SDG goals. That's actually bring new revenue and growth drivers for the business.
Yeah, Miranda, how about you in terms of how New World Development, right? How are you looking at this profit versus cost point?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I think first and foremost, we do look at, first of all, like it's a lot of risk management, right? So when we're taking all these considerations into account, we're, helping the business, manage risk. There's also a lot of, financial benefit to a lot of our ESG measures. Yes, maybe there might be sometimes, a more, upfront cost that might be higher. But what does that translate to in the future? For example, if we have energy efficiency hardware in place, is that reducing operational expenses in the future? Potentially, right? If we have a, better, greener, healthier building, is that attracting, more premium tenants who are, willing to, pay a more, premium rent, potentially. So, we have, we do have these opportunities that we have to look at, but also from the risk management side, if we're thinking about, okay, in the future, will there be different levies in place? That waste levy is coming up soon. There might be future carbon, taxation. We don't know about these, transitional risks that are happening. So I think, it is a very important, risk and opportunity assessment. And, while there, might be potential, upfront costs, there might be future savings, future considerations that have to be taken into account. So it can't just be, a short-term kind of thinking. It's more of a long-term strategy. And I think and also in general, when we're thinking about maintaining our business, it's not just about, sustaining for the next 1 or 3 years. We're talking about a long-term sustainable future for the company, but not just for the company, but it's also places where we operate because we are the built environment. So, we can't just think about, these buildings, being there for the next 1 or 3 years. We have to think about, for example, climate considerations. If, we're not taking any sort of climate assessment into account, will people be able to get to our properties in the future? Like, okay, maybe not, right? So I think, it is so important for the company, and yeah, something that, we prioritize, at our company. Yeah.
Thank you, Miranda. I think you have just defined again for us what sustainable investment means in terms of, this is what this is about. It is about long-term strategy. It is about risk management and looking at the future. Now we are coming up to time, so I just want to ask if any final words from both of you in the context of transforming our business model and moving towards a more sustainable investment. Kind of maybe a minute each on final words for the audience.
So just a very short recap. I think a lot of corporates would be getting used to a collaborative engagement or group engagement by investors on sustainability issues. That's actually a good thing for companies. So get used to it, be prepared for it, because like you could basically speak to a lot of investors about what you are doing and how sustainability would be able to help you to grow the business. I mean, could be honest, and the focus, as Miranda mentioned, the focus on social aspects and also the nature aspects will be some emerging topics that investors will be interested to learn more from the companies.
Miranda?
I think not much of a recap. I think, thank you so much, for this opportunity. I think all of us are on this journey together. There's still so much to be done, but I think we're doing, what we can to create, environmental and social outcomes through our products and our services, and, excited to, engage with everyone further to, better, go on this journey together.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here today with our audience. I think I'm sure they have learned a lot from the two of you in your experience and your words of wisdom. I want to say thank you as well for everyone who have joined us today. I hope you found that interesting. For those of you who want to pick up some of these discussions, a replay of the webinar will be available on the LinkedIn page of the Asian Financial Forum. And of course, this is just a touch of the issues, right? The Asian Financial Forum, or the AFF, will be held in 24th or 25th of January 2024. And that will be another opportunity to go deeper into all these issues. We hope to see you there. And for now, please stay on for a short video to recap what we've discussed and showcase at the last AFF. Thank you.
Whole world's people are facing daunting challenges, including climate and sustainable development and other global UN goals. I need the global solutions in addressing global challenges. That's the main reason why I am here attending the Asian Financial Forum.
I think if we look at it in the business and company sense, a woman leader will have a particular ear out to what the women consumers and clients actually want. They showed empathy with their communities. They followed the science.
And science has told us very clearly that by the end of this decade, by the end of 2030, we have to be at 1/2 global emissions if we want to stand any chance of having a stable economy and a stable planet after 2030.
I think a lot of the pundit has not shared or count that when the North Asia, especially China, Hong Kong, things will actually also help a lot in the world recovery. This conference in particular and Hong Kong in general can play a huge role in centralizing the trade and the investment across, not just in North Asia, but also all Asia.
Hong Kong is strategically positioned in the finance and commerce in the entire region of Asia. And Asia is undoubtedly strategically positioned in global commerce and manufacturing. So Hong Kong and this forum should be the clarion call for decarbonization in the region.
Open new possibilities, all of that is positive.